What's up guys, today we're going to be going over the Hawkmoon once again and going over a lot of new things that we didn't discuss in the previous video. In that video you guys left a lot of comments. I saw a bunch of people asking for testing with Lucky Pants, DPS numbers of Hawkmoon, and also some other things. So that's going to be what we're going to be testing in this video and be kind of like a follow-up to my first Hawkmoon video for PvE. And before the video begins, my G Fuel code AIR is going to be 30% off through Monday. Now on top of that, there is a few flavors that are $6 off in general. So there's a lot of really good deals right now for the holidays, so definitely try out new flavors, stock up on your favorites, buy a gift for a family member or something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and link the store in the comments description and go ahead and check it out. So let's go ahead and begin with the Hawkmoon. The first thing I want to test is Lucky Pants. Precision hits load one round to the chamber of stowed hand cannons. Hand cannons reload faster and more accurate immediately after swapping to them. So as we showed off in the first video, the way this exotic perk works on the Hawkmoon is every single time you get a precision hit or final blow, you'll get a stack of the buff. The highest buff you can get is ×7, and that will work on the final bullet and consume all the stacks and do a lot of damage. But with Lucky Pants, what you can pretty much do is you can swap to another weapon and get precision hits, and that will load ammo back into the magazine of the Hawkmoon. So you can get a higher magazine than 8 with the Hawkmoon and avoid reloading, which should mean you can get a higher stack, but 7 is the cap no matter what. It's like hard coded to be 7. So pretty much the purpose of Lucky Pants would be if you miss a shot or miss a crit, you could then swap to another weapon and get those shots back into the magazine. That way you guarantee to get 7 by the time you're on the last shot, which would be helpful for if you're trying to get ×7 for a boss or something like that. But there is something about Lucky Pants I found that makes this pretty much pointless. If you overload the Hawkmoon back to 8 in the magazine by getting precision hits, it will pretty much artificially reload the weapon and you'll lose all of your stacks. So for this to work, you would pretty much have to see how many bullets you're missing and make sure never to go back to 8. As long as you only go to 7, you're good to go and you won't lose your stacks. And given the fact that you pretty much need 2 primaries to make this work, you could use like a slug shotgun or something like that and get a few shots back here and there. But ideally, you would pretty much need 2 primaries. And given the fact that you can't even reload the Hawkmoon back to 8 if you want to keep your stacks, and given the fact that the buff is capped at 7, which you can get without Lucky Pants, overall I see no purpose of pretty much ever using Lucky Pants with Hawkmoon. I think in PvE you want to be using the final round as often as possible, even if it's only ×4, ×5, ×6, ×7, whatever it is. You want to be using that as often as possible to fully take advantage of the weapon. So in my opinion, delaying when you shoot the final round off in the magazine pretty much just makes the weapon worse. So pretty much the only reason to ever use Lucky Pants would be to make sure you get ×7 by the time you do get to the end magazine. And as we showed off in the previous video, once you're to the final round, if you swap weapons, you lose the buff. And a good way to get around that is just leaving 2 bullets in the magazine. So you would have ×6 with 2 in the mag left. Then you would use whatever other weapons you have on to clear out the remaining adds until you got to the boss, ultra, whatever you want. Then you just shoot off the 7th and 8th shot, and the 8th shot would be the full buff. So that'd be a good way to like kind of store the perk for a boss. Which leads me to the DPS of Hawkmoon. I saw a bunch of people wanting DPS numbers of this compared to Outbreak. So that's what we're going to do. First with the Hawkmoon we saw in the previous clip. Here is the damage on Carl without the buff and with the full ×7. So if you shoot entire magazine at a boss where the first 7 shots are just getting 2 ×7 and the final shot would be with the full buff, that will result in roughly 23.4 thousand DPS, which obviously isn't good compared to specials and heavies, but for a primary that is pretty good. So it's pretty much gonna beat almost every primary in the game. Then for some specials, you know, it's not too far off. It's definitely no slug, but for a normal shotgun that does roughly like 25,000 DPS, you know, that's not too far off. And pretty much the only primary that can even get close is gonna be the Outbreak Perfected. With the exotic perk, this weapon creates Cena nanite swarms on rapid hits and precision kills. Then the secondary perk, this weapon does more damage to enemies based on the number of Siva nanites that are attached to them. Then the catalyst increase nanite damage. Enemies that die with nanites attached to them generate additional nanites. So all in all, there's a lot of moving parts with this weapon and it's always a rough time to test. But looking at the base damage on Carl, on body shot, headshot, then the nanites, every 4th hit you will create 3 nanites that hit for 1127. Then as more and more nanites attached to Carl, the damage of the actual weapon itself will go higher and higher. And obviously Carl isn't the best test dummy for something like this. Plus the more people you have shooting Outbreak at the target, the higher the buff will go and the quicker it will reach that number. So what we did instead was go to a strike boss with 3 people all shooting at him. Once again, here are the base numbers on the strike boss this time. That way I can convert the numbers back to the Carl numbers at the end. And pretty much all we did was shoot at the strike boss in the body to try to create as many nanites as possible before killing them. And then at the last second, you know, get a few headshots in to see what the damage number was. And if I remember correctly, when this weapon first came out and I did a bunch of testing, This number that we see by the end is pretty much the cap of the weapon, because as more and more nanites attached to the boss, the previous ones fall off. So eventually there is kind of like a cap to how many nanites can be attached to a single target. And I think with more people, all that happens is you reach that number quicker. And finally, the last few shots we hit is 4183. And that's going to be 4.25x the base damage. So the highest we would see on Carl would be, in theory, 3172. And like I mentioned, the more people you have shooting Outbreak Perfected at a single target, faster you would reach that number. And we look at the rate of fire of one magazine, shooting off all 36 shots. That's going to take 4.543 seconds. And now look at the DPS of this weapon, including the nanite damage. The base damage when you first start will be 8,152. Then by the time you get to the highest buff, it will go all the way up to 27.3 thousand. And how fast you reach that highest DPS number is based on how many people you have. With 3 people, it might take multiple magazines. With 6, it might be there by the end of the second. So overall, the Hawkmoon number actually isn't that bad compared to the Outbreak. The Outbreak does peak a little bit higher, but that would require multiple people shooting at the same target at the same time. And the thing about the Hawkmoon is I think we can actually optimize it a little bit better for DPS, because I don't think it's really meant to be a weapon that you just shoot Hawkmoon itself at the boss and that's it. I think where it will really shine for DPS is using it as a combo weapon. And for example, we can pair it with First and Last Out, and look at damage on Carl with that, it's 28,969. And pretty much what I'm proposing is you get ×7 on the Hawkmoon and you shoot it and quick swap to the shotgun and shoot off a magazine of the shotgun. And that'll take roughly 4.5 seconds, meaning almost 50,000 DPS. So that combo is obviously pretty good. You get the burst damage of the Hawkmoon ×7 shot, then followed up with a magazine of the slug. But for the slug, Anarchy would still be a little bit better and result in roughly like 53,000 DPS. But where Hawkmoon would be better would be with something like a Fallen Guillotine. And Guillotine, you can't really pair it with Anarchy because obviously it's in the same slot. So instead what you can do is get the ×7 Hawkmoon and then follow up with a combo of the Guillotine and look at damage on Carl with the sword just for DPS numbers. This combo will be pretty good and will result in roughly 54.4 thousand DPS, which is almost 10,000 higher than if you just use Fallen Guillotine by itself. So when it comes to DPS, I think the way you want to use Hawkmoon is for the quick burst of the ×7 shot, then followed up with another good weapon. Think of it how Anarchy works for special weapons, where for special weapons you obviously stick the target with Anarchy and that'll add a little bit of DPS along the way. But for heavy weapons, obviously you can't use Anarchy at the same time. You can use Witherhoard, but Witherhoard is not even close to as good as Anarchy. So instead what you could do is pair it with the Hawkmoon and do that burst damage of the ×7 right away, then go into the heavy weapon as you would. So think of Hawkmoon as almost like a Izanagi's Burden, but it's a primary weapon, which means you can then still use a special at the same time. So I'm still a huge fan of Hawkmoon overall. I think it is, like, in theory, the best primary in PvE because of the fact that it's a normal primary and you can use it versus red bars and have, you know, infinite ammo pretty much. But then at the same time, on the last bullet, it is pretty much an Izanagi's Burden. And you can use that for burst damage on ultras throughout the game, or you can even use it as a quick burst for bosses, then followed up with, you know, a shotgun or a sword. So it's really a primary and special weapon all in one at the same time. The only thing is you kind of have to play into it and it takes a little bit of effort. And because of that, I'm not quite sure if it'll ever be like the meta, because I think there's a lot of options in the game that are extremely good that you don't really have to put that much focus into. Unlike the Hawkmoon, where I think it requires a level of focus to be able to fully optimize it. So it definitely has a higher skill ceiling. And for that reason, I'm not sure it will ever be meta, but I think if it's something that you want to learn and kind of get used to, you can definitely do some cool stuff with this weapon. Anyways, I think that's it for the commentary on the Hawkmoon. Sorry for reused gameplay here at the end. My internet is back to being out. You know, it worked again for 12 hours and it's back to being out, and I'm not quite sure what's going on, to be honest. So yeah, hopefully that gets fixed soon. I think in the meantime, I might have to move my old PC over to my dad's house, which will work for making videos and stuff, but I can't really even play the game right now, which hasn't been that big a deal recently because I already have like all the weapons and stuff I'm making videos on. But hopefully it's fixed before the dawning, because obviously I might have to play a lot for the dawning to get all the new stuff or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely been a pain recently, my internet, and we are moving out of this place in February. Even if it's not fixed by then, we're moving anyways. But once again, if I miss uploads at some point in December, that's probably why. Obviously I've been trying my best to still get them out using my like data hotspot and stuff like that, but yeah, it's been rough. Anyways, once again, my G Fuel code is 30% off through Monday. You guys have been crushing it so far with the G Fuel partnership, and if we keep it up, one day we might have a shaker, which I'll probably try to use Greg on it, or even a flavor down the road, who knows. Anyways, that's it for the video, just a bit of straight gameplay. Thanks for watching, catch you guys next time.